Truth Unveiled here, and today I have some urgent information to share with you in case you already haven't heard about it. It has to do with Milwaukee and the National Guard that's been activated there. And if you don't think this is coming to a city and police state near you, it's time to think again. But I'm here at the USA Today and it says Wisconsin governor activates National Guard after Milwaukee unrest. And what you're about to see is that it's not just in Milwaukee that the National Guard has been activated, it's in other places as well. And so it says Governor Scott Walker activated the National Guard on Sunday to assist the Milwaukee Police Department upon request in the aftermath of violence in Milwaukee's Sherman Park neighborhood after a fatal police shooting. Walker said he activated the Guard after a request from Sheriff David A. Clark Jr. and conferring with Mayor Tom Barrett and Major General Donald Dunbar. And then the development came as a sense of calm and order. What does that sound like? Returned to the neighborhood Sunday morning after a night when businesses were torched, cars overturned and set ablaze, and gunfire erupted following the fatal police shooting. By mid-Sunday morning, the area near North Sherman Boulevard and West Burleigh Street was clogged with onlookers and cars and on foot, but the area soon swelled with people showing up to clean up trash from the unrest the night before. And in just a second, I'm going to show you some pictures of what happened in Milwaukee and some of the unrest itself. But just notice how the Milwaukee Police Department even says the MPD is restoring order to the places and reducing deployments. Restoring order. Where else have I heard that? Now, these are just some of the brief pictures that I wanted to show you. As you can see, the civil unrest and the summer of chaos, it's only getting worse from here. If you're not seeing it by now, I hope you are. And just know this too, that a lot of it is funded by Soros and all those other elite Zionist terrorists at the very top who are funding all of these things because they know this is their plans of bringing in martial law and instituting the military. Is this just another practice run in order to bring in the military? Are they testing everything and test running this before they bring all of this to major cities and bigger cities such as Chicago and many others? Only time will tell, but I hope you see exactly what they're getting ready for. This was reported in Maryland actually, but I don't know if you heard about this. It comes from the Baltimore Sun and it says National Guard drills for major disease outbreak. And mind you, this was just reported yesterday and they just so happened to be drilling for this around the same time that we see what just happened with the civil unrest in Milwaukee too. And by the way, your government and your military have been preparing for civil unrest in America for so many years now, and I'm going to prove that to you later on in just a second to come. But we see what? More stage chaos ready to go. And it's just interesting and suspicious indeed that they're even drilling for a major disease outbreak because they're getting ready for a pandemic nationwide. Is that what they're doing? And we already know that Soros and all those other elites such as the Rockefellers, we know that the Rockefellers fund and patented the Zika virus. So no, it doesn't come from a so-called mosquito. It comes from a patent back in 1947. But did you also know that your government has been stockpiling vaccines, IV fluids, and other means and methods of depopulation tactics, courtesy medicines, which don't work by the way, but they already have this stuff ready to go. They have the techniques ready to go because they're getting ready to stage their pandemic, but the way they have to do it is bring in the military as well to enforce biometrics and other methods and means of depopulation. And like I said, this was just reported yesterday. So the fact that they're doing this week, along with what just happened in Milwaukee with the National Guard being deployed and activated there, it's only a matter of time, folks. But it says some 300 troops from the Maryland National Guard this week for a deadly outbreak of a bird flu-like disease that they envisage would spread panic in urban areas and require the killing of chickens by the barnful. Or is this just another preparation technique for their new world order? Let's keep going. Troops from the 231st Chemical Company worked Saturday with local officials in Queen Anne's County and staff from the state agriculture department to practice decontaminating the machine that would be used to slaughter poultry in the hopes of stopping any infection from spreading. Normally, the soldiers would wear tightly sealed protective suits, but given the near 100-degree heat, they chose to work in t-shirts. Colonel Michael Bennett said that the Guard had spent months preparing for the drill. His team had sketched a terrifying scenario, health workers in Indonesia reporting the first incidents of the flu spreading into humans in January, and it quickly spreads throughout the world, reaching the United States by May through an infected passenger on an airline flight, kind of like the so-called alleged Zika virus and all the other ones. Is that what they're preparing for? So they've been doing this for months. And speaking of all these drills, that's all we've been hearing about. Even the drills that have been going on in Vermont, and they're preparing for civil unrest, and they're preparing for an outbreak with disease too. Why all of these drills all of a sudden? What exactly could they be really using them for? Now, I thought this was interesting because it says the exercise had three main components. Guardsmen practiced taking deliveries of vaccine stockpiles and keeping them safe. But I already just showed you the report from NPR that they've been stockpiling, your government and the CDC have been stockpiling vaccines and antibiotics and all of these pandemic related things for many years now. And they even have up to $7 billion worth of material, and they've been secretly doing this behind closed doors without us even knowing it, without any approval from the government whatsoever. I wonder why that's the case. And then they say that they also train for vaccinating the Guards' troops, their families, and other emergency crews while warding off civilians who might seek to gain access to the reserve supply. But what if these vaccines contain even more deadly diseases, because vaccines are linked with many more diseases? And what if they just so happen to have the RFID biometric chip as well, so that your government can control and surveil you even more? Is that what they're about to do? Now, although this is supposed to be a drill in Maryland, it's just interesting how this article mentions once again the National Guard and how they operate to support local authorities such as local law enforcement. But it's also interesting when they bring up the shooting of Freddie Gray once again that happened in Baltimore that triggered all of the riots and the race riots. Is that what they're getting ready for once again? Because we know darn well that it's about what? Civil unrest, summer of chaos. Because whether you know it or not, but even in Ferguson, Missouri, many of those alleged protesters were not even from Ferguson. Who funded them and who caused all that chaos? Are they making order out of chaos and restoring order just like they are in Milwaukee? But it's not just the National Guard that we're seeing in places such as Milwaukee being activated, as well as drills in Maryland. It's also Louisiana too, due to all of the flooding problem reaction solution. And by the way, I reported on this a few days ago, but Louisiana has just declared a state of emergency that's supposed to last until September of 2016 for nearly a month now. Some serious alarm bells should be ringing, and anytime the military gets involved with something, some alarm bells should be ringing. How do we know where they're actually taking these people? What shelter places are they taking them to? Are they taking them to FEMA camps in disguise? What's really going on here? Because what you're going to see is that your government and military have been preparing for all of this civil unrest and civil disturbances, just like we're seeing in Milwaukee. But that's not all. They're also preparing for things like this. They're preparing for major flooding in America. They're preparing for all of these things to happen. And they're also preparing for martial law. And there are classified government documents that even prove that your government is preparing for martial law, with all of the Jade Helm drills and the Jade Helm documents as well, because yes, they're preparing for that. They even have guidelines for martial law with it. But that's not all, because they even have the civil disturbance army document where your army is preparing for civil disturbance as well. And that's all we've been hearing about when it comes to the protests and the riots, especially when it has to do with the alleged elections, when we know full well that these elections are only being used as a ploy and a device in order to spread chaos and trigger chaos. What? Order out of chaos. And they're trying to keep you distracted with how Hillary Clinton's doing and how she's feeling and all those seizures and whatnot. But really, it's all a big ploy and distraction, keeping your mind away from what's really going on and what's going on in the world around you. Not to mention all of the military tanks that we've been seeing and UN trucks and military vehicles all across America. Do you think they're just doing that because they have nothing better to do, or because, oh, it's just fun to do it? No, there's something more sinister going on. Now, I've gone over this document many times, but I would just like to reiterate it once again to drill it through your head to let you know and prove to you that yes, your military and your government are getting ready and preparing for civil unrest like never before, and they're getting ready to call in the National Guard and the United Nations troops like never before so that they can replace law enforcement with the military, declare martial law in America, which is why you're seeing all of these test drills and preparations, as well as so many evacuations, and I hope everything is starting to piece together. This document comes from the Department of the Army and it's called Internment Resettlement Operations. Now, what I thought was very interesting and suspicious indeed with what we're talking about is actually comes from Chapter 4, which is Methods of Transportation, because yes, your military has already laid out a blueprint foundations and the groundwork for how they want to keep detainees and how they want to detain people. So what if martial law is officially declared and there's another state of emergency that's unconstitutionally declared by your president? Well, what that means is that the military can come in, the government can seize everything, and they can have the so-called legal right to put you into FEMA camps and to displace you from your home because of a national emergency and for the safety and security of the nation, because you could be considered a terrorist if you don't comply to what they're telling you, or if you don't accept their vaccines, aka the biometric identification chip. But this is the method of transportation. As you can see, they have by foot and wheeled vehicle and by bus, but when you actually start to look at it, you start to see that they already have detainees that are already placed, 2 detainees per seat. I'm not making this stuff up. They also have cargo truck transport as well. They also have movements by rail, which is why you're seeing all the United Nations railways and the shackles on them, as well as helicopters too. And you can see on the helicopters they have detainees, and they list detainees. Who do you think these detainees are? Especially when we know that the National Guard and military are preparing like no other, which is why we're seeing all of this civil unrest. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, because time is running out. It's only a matter of time, but this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated and saying as always, peace, love, and shalom.